You want to be in the shoot? You can just ask. You don't have to be sneaky about it. What's up, Spikes? We're back. We're talking Ninja Turtles today. But before we get into that, sponsors like normal. First sponsor, GameGenic. Genius Supplies have been outfitting us and all the Spikes with the best accessories on the planet, including our own accessories, which you can find on our website or Star City Games if you live in the States and want to save on a bit of shipping. Speaking of Star City Games, also shout out to Star City Games for supporting the channel. They have SCGCon Richmond coming up March 6th through 8th for the TMNT Spotlight. You can find more information at scgcon.starcitygames.com and Moxfield. We're going to be talking about a lot of things, including a lot of decks. You'll find QR codes throughout the video, scan them to get right to the deck, or you can find all of them in the description down below. So, speaking of Ninja Turtles, we're talking about, just like Lorwyn, Ninja Turtles after the fact. We've had this set for a while, and this set a little longer than normal, and what we built, what we didn't build, decisions that, lessons learned, things I would do differently maybe next time, and everything kind of, everything around that. So, Ninja Turtles came to us a little earlier than normal. It was surprise, part of some people's Lorwyn pre-release, so we got access to information sooner than expected. But that let a lot of people start brewing decks again earlier than definitely planned for, which definitely adjusted the normal, workflow that I have. So typically, when the Spikes, we all get the assets, 2 sets. We have, I think I described last time as 10 to 15-ish days, depending on when we get it, when we're filming, when we want to release, stuff like that. But this time, most of the rares and mythics were leaked ahead of time. So a lot of the rares and commanders were, again, there was a lot of information out there that I could already work with, which, I'm not going to lie, made my job a lot easier this time. That being said, when we did get the set, even after the leak, I was originally pretty cold to the Ninja Turtles universe, admittedly. There's been a lot of, criticism towards Universes Beyond as a whole. Wizards is really pushing it into the forefront of Magic. It's become 50%, if not more, of everything we've been consuming lately, and it's been in a really tight window where it feels like, we've had 8 months of it. And after the disaster that might have been Spider-Man, I was pretty cold, like I said, going into Ninja Turtles. But once we finally got the entire set and I started building different decks and looking at the actual set itself, the 5-year-old Aaron, I'm an old man, finally came out and was able to fully appreciate Ninja Turtles. So I would say after the fact, after I've built the decks, we've played the games, I'm actually really excited for the set to come out. Some of the treatments are wonky, and I think, even though they're not all for me, I think the set does a really good job kind of poking fun of itself and being intentionally zany, like Ninja Turtles would be. Not taking itself too seriously and making the cards fun. And I do think it's a fantastic commander set. Can't say much about Standard, not a big Standard gamer, but I think it is at the end of the day, a great Standard set. A great commander set. The set ended up having about, similar-ish amount of legends to Spider-Man, about 103 if you include the commander sets, 72 if you don't. This set had a commander deck. The last 2 universes didn't. And the commander deck, before I get too deep, is very good. It's only one deck this set, which is kind of weird, but it has 43 new cards, and the cards and the commanders are very, very good. I think it's probably the best single product of the entire line, and it's I've been recommending it to a ton of people, for sure. So with Ninja Turtles, we got a few new mechanics. We got Sneak, which is ninjutsu adjacent, and we got a new token type mutagen. So the set features a lot of both. Sneak was originally received kind of weird to the general public. It is ninjutsu, but more evergreen, so it can fit into more, not ninja-themed sets. But it lets you cast spells and creatures during combat after blockers at typically a discounted or better rate, like ninjutsu. But the big change was spells. And then mutagen tokens, in the next line of treasure, food, blood, scrap, junk, Now you get mutagen, which is an artifact that you can sacrifice for 1 and give a creature a +1/+1 counter at sorcery speed. So right away, there was a ton of cards that care about Sneak, about combat, and definitely about having counters. Michelangelo's entire personality in this set is counters and counter adjacent things, which led to a lot of deck building choices obviously directly affected by these things. Splinter Radical Rat was the obvious sneak commander, and then there's a myriad of different counter commanders, but we'll get into that in a little bit. But we needed 7 commanders, at least 7. A little bit of a spoiler, but more than 7 for this time. But we settled on Raph and Leo, Raph and Mikey, Dawn and Leo, Super Shredder, Krang Mastermind, Splinter Radical Rat, and Rat King Verminister. We also have, bit of a spoiler, but later on, when we release a Commander Party video, we have 4 new commanders, which include the Neutrinos, Heroes in a Half Shell, Bebop and Rocksteady, and Krang the All-Powerful. And that's Bebop and Rocksteady from the Commander deck, not Bebop and Rocksteady, the 7/5 from the main set. I was initially impressed by a lot of these commanders, and I was pretty confident that a lot of them would be fairly popular. But again, like I said, the set was spoiled pretty early, and I was very surprised to see Super Shredder. I'm not still sure if it's number 1, but it was number 1 on EDH for a long time, which is really surprising. Honestly, it's just a efficient 2-mana evasive creature, kind of like what I would expect in Modern or Standard. So again, I was surprised to see it being so popular in Commander. Also, Rat King Verminister, but that one's a little less surprising. But yeah, those were the 11 decks we built for this set, and we're gonna get into things that that stood out, that overperformed, or maybe I would have done differently after this. So I'm going to go over the standouts from the set after going over it, a few times. And some of them didn't end up making the cut for decks that I built. Raph and Mikey for sure did. Krang and Shredder was actually a card really early on my list. Krang Mastermind, Rat King Verminister again, the Neutrinos, and Hero in a Half Shell. It felt like I should include Heroes in the Half Shell, or at least some of the commanders in some way, because normally we film some sort of pre-con video, but there only being 1. While we could very easily move around the commanders in the set, in fact, the deck was built maybe even to do that. Well, not maybe, it was intentionally built to do that, but to showcase different pairings of commanders. It felt like it wouldn't be the best viewing experience to see, 98 of the same cards play against each other for all 4 players, so we decided to not do that. But like I said, I wanted to feature it somewhere, so this Commander Party video felt like a pretty good shoe-in. Neutrinos is a uncommon commander that wasn't spoiled ahead of time, and is one of my favorite cards in the set, actually. This weird space flying car. Boros Flying Car is what I called the deck for a while. Phil really liked that name. And then Krang and Shredder. I did like that commander quite a bit. It's kind of this big mid-range value. But I think once I kind of laid out all the decks, it didn't fit. It was kind of this big, clunkier deck that was pretty control heavy, that just would either blink or take advantage of sacrificing stuff, along with some amount of pairing of, wrath effects and whatnot, which I think would have probably affected the flow of the rest of the decks pretty heavily, so I decided against it. Though I am a big fan of that card at the end of the day, and will most likely build it on my own time. And then Raph and Mikey, I think, was a pretty obvious standout that this card's fun. It's like this. It's like the maybe the default Timmy experience. I'm just gonna slam the 7-mana commander and let Jesus take the wheel. And boy, did it ever! It has a great performance every single time it showed up, and I look forward to it in the finals. Now, for not commander cards that stood out to me, I would say the list starts with Super Shredder, because I didn't think this card was a very interesting commander, but I think it's a great 99 card. Armageddon Future Shark is another great 99 card. I don't think it's a really interesting commander itself, but it's just like a huge reanimator target that's probably going to be hard to ignore. It comes into play and destroys 2 creatures. Really easy to abuse. I would imagine to see it in future reanimation shells moving forward. Krang Utrom Warlord, again, is legendary, but is a big 99 card. That card is like Walls of Bossing Say, but like over the top even, and even we just got Walls of Bossing Say. So again, another card that is for sure up my alley. Madison also super excited for it, and I would imagine that card will be a pretty big artifact staple moving forward. And then it's a lot of cards in the commander deck. I did mention it earlier in the video, but I think they did a really, really good job with it. There's a ton of cards that not just in the deck that are good, again, and all like the cares about ninjas, mutants, and turtles, also cares about counters, also to kind of random commander pairings like Bebop and Rocksteady. There's another Krang in that set that cares about things that trigger when you draw cards, or when other people draw cards, which is like such actually a pretty unique take. A ton of cards that I thought were super, super good in the commander deck, and I'm very, very excited for that product. But yeah, tons of cards. I'm a little more than normal. But I think when you have universes beyond sets, you definitely get the pick of the what's the term? Your pick of the litter when it comes to commanders. You get, there's typically tons. Like I said earlier, there's about 103 with the commander set. Well, while Lorwyn had 16, I think was the final number. That's not very many, and you have to choose 7 of those 16, right? You're choosing a pretty healthy amount. So yeah, Ninja Turtles had a lot to offer, at least in the commander side of it, and that's why I think kind of the more and more I kind of sunk my teeth into it, I was more and more sold of it being a pretty powerful commander set. So we built 7 decks, jammed against each other to get 4 winners to all play the championship later this month to see who is the best. But how did it turn out? I guess, what did I like? What did I not like? I was very impressed immediately, actually, about how powerful Raph and Leo could be, and then immediately disappointed that it was always like a card away, a turn away from to be able to kind of, show its full potential. But for 3 mana, it takes extra combats, gives multiple things extra combats. I think it's the cheapest you could get that effect for. We realized pretty quickly that this card can be very, very powerful. But again, it like underperforms slightly each time. And I think there's a version of that deck that could have performed a lot better. I do think my list was maybe missed the mark a bit. It didn't really focus on evasion, which you need to tackle with Raph and Leo. So be able to make sure that card can get in is a pretty big difference maker. As a comparison, the Neutrinos, another commander that I built very similarly, doesn't have to worry about this. It has the best mechanic in commander, flying, hard to block. All the cards you typically reserve, Dolmen Gate, Iroas, making it unblockable. You can scrap all these cards and just play more efficient cards that help your game plan. Because again, your commander already has like built-in evasion. And like Phil says, flying is the best mechanic in the format. Raph and Leo, like I said, very powerful ability, but just like missed quite a bit. And I'm sure I built this token kind of go wide strategy to try to take advantage of like attacking, get tokens. Probably wasn't it. And again, I think I needed to focus a lot more on evasion to kind of really make that card, show what it can do for sure. Super Shredder was another commander that I was pretty sold on pretty fast. It just gets so big. It's so out of hand so fast. There's so many things that leave the battlefield. You don't even need to like really work that hard. Yeah, you can play a couple, like a single Innocent Blood, a single Fleshbag Marauder, and suddenly this like menace creature is already hard to block. It's already hard to block regularly, but now has menace. And then you're a turn or 2 away from that card like 2-shotting you to 1-shotting you. Also, special shout out to Vincent Valentine. It was one of the first times that I really got to play that card, and that card for sure gets out of hand fast. Doesn't cost 2, but again, it certainly showed how strong it can be in the Swiss rounds. Yeah, Super Shredder, very big. Again, not the flashiest card, not the thing I'm necessarily buying packs for, but yeah, that card for sure showed how strong I got. Like even if you don't play it as a commander, even as a 99 card filler in an Aristocrats deck, that card grows very, very fast. Another thing that I noticed pretty quickly is like sneak spells felt pretty bad. And I think that's probably because they're designed for limited mostly. All the sneak creatures played pretty good. They play a lot like Ninjutsu cards do. You sometimes trade up your smaller evasive creature for some better creature with either an ETB effect or deals combat damage to a player effect. And then you're going to redeploy your cheap guy. But you're not trading tempo. You're not, even if you trade a same size guy for same size guy with some upside, you're still not, again, trading tempo. You're just getting incremental upgrades. But when I have to bounce my, either a small evasive creature, be it being a 1-drop or an Ornithopter, or even a 2-drop for like a removal spell, or even like Wheel of Fortune, or even Demonic Tutor, it didn't feel great. Obviously, in these tempo-focused ninja decks, it feels very bad. You need to like play to the board and kind of, through numbers will eventually snowball through the game. And maybe if we try them out in a few more kind of more mid-range style decks where bouncing the creature doesn't, mind as much, maybe it would feel better. But yeah, sneak spells felt like a miss. And again, a lot of them are these like combat tricks or more limited focus things where we would often just either like pay just the retail cost for that card was way more appealing than having to sneak it in. Because again, the idea of returning a creature as additional cost was such a burden. But maybe that's what makes some of them appealing too, because you don't have to do either or. You can just cast it as a spell, or you can just cast it as a sneaky spell. But yeah, I was very surprised like how bad those felt pretty quickly. But yeah, creatures all felt great. That part's cool. Also, in the design space, I thought they did a very, very good job like identifying each turtle in each color and like this is what this turtle does, and it's very thematic to the character without kind of warping or changing magic to fit it. So Leonardo is like very supportive. He wants to buff and bring back his allies. Raphael just cares about combat. Donatello cares about artifacts. And Michelangelo cares about mutagen tokens, or mutagen counters, mutagen tokens, and tokens in general. So Michelangelo being maybe the oddball out, but Michelangelo is an oddball. It made sense. And again, it's nice that all of them each kind of represented a color well, while Shredder was the bad guy, so Shredder encompasses the color black. But yeah, I thought that was nice. It was nice that it didn't feel, again, that they had forced a mechanic or theme that felt out of the color pie to kind of like, fit into, make the Ninja Turtle fit into the box. It just seemed to fit naturally, which you could feel while playing the cards, which is nice. And yeah, not a big gameplay effect, I guess, but just nice that they, didn't feel forced. So what would I do differently? We have another video coming out, like I said, in March 16th. We have a Commander Party featuring 4 new decks. As you can tell, I was pretty excited for the decks. As someone who builds them, I was, I had enough that I could find a 4th to then put in the Commander Party. So to kind of reiterate, we have the Neutrinos, Heroes in a Half Shell, Bebop and Rocksteady, and Krang the All-Powerful. Like I mentioned earlier, I thought Krang was really interesting. Maybe short a few cards in Mono Blue. The draws cards matters theme. I ended up playing it. It's I think it's maybe a few cards short, but I do like the idea. I do think it's hard to find a kind of more unique space type commander to build around nowadays, and I think that Krang does a pretty good job of that. Heroes in the Half Shell is a great way to showcase just all the turtles in the set. Neutrinos was, again, I think still one of my favorite commanders from the set. Very powerful uncommon. That gives you things pseudo haste. It kind of blinks them into play. And a little bit of a spoiler, it plays very similarly to Raph and Leo, but it, again, has the evasion, so it can perform very well. And again, a bit of a spoiler, it does very well in the video. And Bebop and Rocksteady. Who doesn't like Bebop and Rocksteady? They have the Turtles in Time art. I love Turtles in Time. As the person who makes the thumbnails, you probably figured that part out. You can probably tell how familiar I am with any given property based on how much work is put in the thumbnail, because I'm the person who does them, and when I'm very familiar, I kind of go over the top things that I know, right? I know the IP, and I knew Spider-Man, I knew Final Fantasy, I knew a little less about Avatar, a little less about Fallout, which is now not the same. Fallout show's been fantastic, actually. Been watching a lot of that. I probably would have featured the Neutrinos over Raph and Leo, and this is, again, the kind of conversation that I had a bit in the year in review that Elliot and I did at the end of 2025. And I think if you are curious about more decision making I make for these type of decks, please watch that video. I go in a lot more in depth in that video than I'm going to in today's. But in Universes Beyond, you typically want to feature the guy. There's a main character, some amount of main characters in every universe. Just like in Avatar, we have felt obligated to include Aang. Originally, I didn't have an Aang deck, which felt silly, right? It's the show, it's the guy. And I didn't want to feature Raph and Leo, not because Raph isn't featured on a bunch of other cards, same with Leonardo, but because it was this random uncommon that I'm not sure people would care about. But I do think that the version of the deck I had was better, even though I think Raph and Leo is a more powerful card. And that led me to choose Raph and Leo because of it's the characters, But yeah, I do think I should have chosen Neutrinos just because I think it was the better deck that we had ready for filming. Again, how much do people think about that? Again, how much do people think about, again, you have to feature the character from the show or the movie. Who knows? That's something that's maybe in my own head. Something that I should also try to do more, and this is more of like a mental note for myself, is I get pretty laser focused in on the main set when I'm looking at it, and I kind of like, horse blinders, is that the blinders? I'm going to use the word blinders to surrounding set, either Jumpstart or Commander deck, or to Turtle Team Up, in this case, that has its own set of exclusive cards. It's really easy to forget those exist and not include them enough. I've been trying to make more of an effort to include cards from the set into decks, to not just showcase the same suite of removal spells, the same suite of ramp spells, the same suite of creatures, which I'm still guilty of, for sure, but I still try to, shoehorn in set mechanic type things for the deck, assuming I think it makes sense. But yeah, I need to be, I think, more aware of everything, but there's a lot. There's a lot to take in. It's sometimes hard to kind of process all of it at once. But it's all in one spot, it's just easy to, make sense of what's in front of you. But speaking of that's definitely what I tried to do in the Commander Party side of this video. When we had to, even though we did have the early access cards a while ago, I did focus on the main set for the Swiss portion. And for the Commander Party, I thought it was a great time to showcase a lot of the Commander cards. Because again, like I've said a few times already, I'm convinced that it's a great product, and a lot of the cards in there are awesome. So I actually thought about replacing the neutrinos again with another commander from the deck, but like neutrinos too much to not. It was like one of the first 3 decks of all of these decks that I ended up building that, again, wasn't showcased till the very end. Yeah, I mean, I'm even going to have a $25 version of it. Again, if you're unaware, I typically build, on average, at least one budget version of a deck, or just an entirely different deck from each set that lives on the Spike Feeder page. If you are curious, it'll also be... at some point, Jim might have brought it up. If not, it'll be in the fold. But you can always find it on the Spike Feeder's Moxfield account, which is just an extension of my account. Another deck that was kind of left on the cutting room floor was Mike and Dawn. Mike and Donnie? Donnie. Mike and Donnie. Mike and Dawn sounds weird. Mike and Donnie, it's the Simic pairing that cared about playing lands and mutants and turtles off the top of your library. I didn't think there was enough blue-green, just turtle-themed cards from the set to fill out the deck, because unfortunately, like I said, Donatello, all of Donatello's cards care about artifacts, which don't really jive with this caring about mutants and land strategy. So all the Donatellos are essentially out, leaving me with all the Michelangelos, and then Magic's history of mutants and turtles that don't really jive together necessarily. And would have taken me probably more time than I would have liked to find a version of the deck that would have made sense, instead of just shoehorning in all the mutants that existed, all the playable mutants that existed. I thought there would have been a version of the deck that played well, kind of as a throwback to Lorwyn Eclipse, is the new Maryland that came out that cares about both elves and fairies. There's probably some version of the deck that is the correct way to build it, or a way to build it so it plays smoothly with some balance of probably both. And I didn't think I could find that harmony before we were set to film. So yeah, Mike and Donnie was left on the cutting room floor, unfortunately. But yeah, I do think that Commander's interesting. Maybe a little more fun than optimal, but that's okay. Which kind of brings us to one of the final points I want to bring up, and that's something that we kind of come across when we build as many decks as we do for any given set, and that's the conversation of will somebody be interested in a worse version of blank? And I talk about this in Lorwyn as well. There's the Kings of Kindred that have been the best for a long time. It's going to be really, really hard to dethrone Krenko, Edgar Markov, Ur-Dragon, right? There's always going to be the best. Do I want to play Brego, or do I want to play, Leo and Donatello, this different Brego? And a lot of people seem to think, or at least we get comments periodically, I should say, so not a lot, that, well, why would I bother wasting my time with, a worse version of X, of anything really? And I think a lot of Commander players, while there is definitely a percent of them that always, try to do things at the most optimal level, the best option available all the time, I think Commander, for the most part, is rooted in people just doing the thing they like doing the thing that they find fun, which often isn't the most optimal option. It's whatever they have around, whatever is in their collection, whatever card they like that might depict art they like, or be a theme or something that resonates to that player specifically. That is not the best option, because, where does it stop? It doesn't stop at, well, Brego's, the best Blink commander. Why would I play these two? Well, why would I play Brego if Brego's not the best commander? It's not even the best blue-white commander. Well, then, what's the best commander, And I think, like I said, I think that's what makes Commander awesome, is people get to kind of self-express what they want to do and how they do it in this 100-card format. And yeah, if people was just doing the best option every time, this format would get pretty stale pretty fast, I think. And even then, there's even CEDH as a whole version of this that is people trying to do the best thing at the highest level, and still, there's no best commander. There's more popular commanders, but not everyone's playing Tim Necrom against each other for a reason, right? People just like to express themselves in different ways, and I think that's what makes Magic Magic. So yeah, Ninja Turtles, I'm actually very excited for it, which is I'm definitely the most excited for it of the spikes. Some of them are a little more hot or cold on it, but like universes, most universes beyond are you either kind of love it or hate it, which is too bad, because I think for most universes beyond, even Spider-Man, which was definitely Not the most successful universe, to be honest, to say the least. There's still, there's still cards from that set that I like quite a bit. Or even Avatar, which is a set that I have like no stake in. I don't know anything about Avatar, but there's still like tons of cards from that came out that year that I loved. Firelord or Avatar Roku is one of my favorite cards from 2025, and that's from a IP that I know nothing about. But yeah, Ninja Turtles, right up my alley. I'm an old man who loved Ninja Turtles growing up. So yeah, this is really doing it for me. So I'm very excited for the release. Hopefully you can find some amount of enjoyment out of it. But so that brings us to the end of the video. Are you excited for Ninja Turtles? Let us know in the comments. We have the championship, February 28th, where we have our 4 winners. Splinter, Super Shredder, Raph and Mikey. I had to think about what order those were in. Krang, Mastermind, Drill Hands himself. All going to the finals. 4 very powerful decks. Raph and Mikey might have got a bit of a bye. If you saw the match, I might have alley-ooped Jim a bit. That's okay though, right? That's for the content, right? Who doesn't like content? And Super Shredder made his way in anyway, so it was okay. It worked out. But yeah, anyway, we have the championship February 28th, and then we have Commander Party a little later, March 16th, but we still have 4 new decks for that series. Yeah, and it's fun to play. Admittedly, I do like Lorwyn a little more, but the idea of mystery pizza is also pretty fun. And yeah, again, just want to thank our sponsors again, GameGenic, Star City Games, Moxfield, and patrons at home. It helps us keep the lights on. We appreciate all the support we get from all of you out there. Yeah, and you can check out the the Patreon for as little as $1 a month to get access to our Discord, and then $5 a month to get additional video per month. Well, actually, it's ended up being $10 to get additional video per month, which ends up being sometimes more than that because we put out more than we think we're going to put out every month. Maybe it's because of how many sets or products or things we're making. But again, thanks for watching. If you have any feedback, please let me know. This is only the second time doing something like this, and I like to imagine that I've made improvements from last time, but maybe that's just me. Who knows? I write these in by myself in a cave. So yeah, give me feedback, or if you have any negative feedback, be sure to point it at Elliot, like I said before. He can take it. He's a handsome boy. Yeah, thanks for watching.